big good one here, and eventually we will like, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know your favorite moments, your least favorite moments. So we're reviewing The Boys Season 2, Episodes 1 through 3, starring Anthony, Starr, Carl Urban, and Jackie Quaid. I think it's Jackie Quaid, or am I wrong? I want to say Dennis Quaid, but no, it's Jack Quaid. It wasn't even Jackie. But let's just go ahead and get into Act 1 of this review. The best stuff up front. So, the dynamic and tensions between all these characters. If you're here doing this review, then you know where we left off back in Season 1. And where we're headed is quite interesting. So, spoiler warning, because there are just some things I can't skirt around. So, coming into Season 2, with the leader of the boys, Butcher, discovering his wife alive with a child, Homelander's child, Butcher's worst enemy, that's really a compelling story element right there. Season 2 puts the boys in a weird holding place, though, where they have to clear their name and kind of take this mission from the government. And Huey himself has nothing but this now. So it's going to be really interesting to see where he goes as a character with this. Is all him having to focus on. However, so far, so like I said, incredibly interesting cast of characters. This cast of characters that they have is just extraordinary. I'm not disappointed by any of their performances. I'm very curious to see where these characters go. And just this season, it's full of friction, headbutting, and conflict of interest between the boys, the seven. It's a really strange place to be in for all these characters. The infighting within the two groups. It makes it hard for either side to operate as a cohesive unit on the same page. It's a really compelling dynamic. Our hero characters do have some interesting moments, but for the most part, Starlight feels like she's been promoted to leading the charge against the Seven and Bot as she takes it upon herself to kind of Trojan horse the company. And that makes her vastly more interesting than anything the boys have going on for them right now, quite honestly. She's got most people, even the newcomer Stormfront, think she's just a bot that rides the company dick by dressing and saying whatever way they expect her to behave. Her most interesting moment, though, is exposing Bot. Sitting in that room with the Seven worried about being outed for exposing the company, and with the kind of CEO in there now. I guess he's the kind of CEO. Stan Edgar, I think his name is. Gustavo Fring from Breaking Bad. So they really play up the tension extraordinarily well in this show. Not just in that moment where she's like worried about being exposed, but in other moments too, like when she's faced with possibly having to kill Huey, because if she doesn't, Homelander will kill them both. Either way, he dies. and she's put on the spot, and it's just really interesting. And there are some great Black Noir moments. His reaction to them being exposed as Vought creations, his reaction to the well on the beach. So far, Black Noir, for me, remains one of the most intriguing characters, and the show continues to play on that by giving him these moments of intrigue that are far and few in between, surrounded by the mystery that is him. And I can't wait to see them flesh out this character and for him to stop riding in the back seat. So, Frenchie, Mother's Milk, and Kimiko, they have some minor great moments. Kimiko, on the other hand, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Hopefully that's how you pronounce it. She has more interesting stuff going for her, and hopefully Mother's Milk gets a bit more, because I'm enjoying how him and Huey go from being at each other's throats to refusing to leave each other behind, and Kimiko having these extraordinary moments that feel long overdue, her character getting really fleshed out. That stuff's great, and I really wanted to highlight that. So, Stan Edge, as I said, a.k.a. Gustavo Fring, continues to make a name for himself as a calm, collected, calculated, business-in-charge type man. He's in charge of Vought, and he's not at all threatened by Homelander, which makes him really interesting. And Homelander, who is now trying to take charge of all the decisions made in the name of the Seven and Vought, it's really interesting and leads to these very interesting confrontational scenes. They're just really great to see, especially once Vought is exposed. So Antony, Starr, Homelander, for me, still remains one of the most likable characters, even though he's a sadistic psychopath that does some really god-awful things and scares everybody into doing things his way, from forcing his way into his son's life to showing us the biggest flaw in a Daredevil type character, to showing his son, shoving his son off the rooftop because he wants him to try to fly, and getting aggressive with the mother in front of the son, and as acting as if, oh, as long as Homelander himself isn't mad about something, then it's okay. Nobody should be mad. Seeing him trying to play the father has been really interesting. And newcomer Stormfront was surprisingly likable at first. She doesn't ride the company dick, say the lines she was supposed to say, encourage people to buy the cheap-ass made toys. Her being honest and open and making a lot of sense. She makes a lot of sense in a lot of stuff she says, and it makes her really compelling. However, things take a turn for the worst when she shows her true colors, when she shows she hasn't really been all that honest and open about herself. People just haven't asked her the right questions. Her social media addiction is also worrisome for not only Vought, but it's interesting to play up the tensions for Vought and for Homelander, because Homelander does a lot of stuff, and she could potentially expose that stuff once she gets to know him a little bit better. But they haven't had much time together on what we've been delivered so far. So, beyond that, the rising tensions between Stormfront and Homelander, you can feel it. While she seemed to have taken a shine to him, at least from my perspective, I think she took a shine to him when he said F Vought directly to, like, Edgar's face. So I think his distaste for her will only grow. I hope it does. It'll be interesting to see where these two characters go. They're both evil, but in different degrees. One's Stormfront starts slaughtering innocents just because of their skin color. Her likability drastically dropped for me. The Deep, and she's really a caution card. This could really hurt your show having a character like that, depending on how far you go with her and what you do with Homelander. If you make him real buddy-buddy with her, and like I said, it could really hurt your show moving forward if you don't apply the brakes in certain areas. So the Deep and his poor sea friends is another thing I want to highlight. This guy, poor dude. I mean, yeah, he's a bastard. But sometimes I kind of feel bad for him, these poor sea creatures, and him getting involved in this stuff. Him trying to, like, it just what happens here to the wild just reminds me of that poor lobster. So personal bias on this one. I'm not as familiar with the source material. I've heard and I can imagine there are some really unlikable drastic departures. Stormfront being gender swapped, one of them. So comment below at those departures. If you're familiar at all with the drastic departures they're making, if you're more familiar with the source material, I've heard the book tends to go too far, and if the showrunners go there, big chance the audience will depart as well, which I think makes it really interesting that you would choose to adapt such source material if you're not willing to go that far. But if you do go that far, look out. So, I really enjoyed all the jabs at Disney in this episode, because my Season 1 review of The Boys, I drew comparisons to Vought and Disney, and I just really enjoyed the jabs they did in these first 3 episodes at Disney. There's a couple of them in there. So, the bad stuff, let's just go ahead and get into Act 3, the bad stuff. I wasn't fond of the Green Arrow, Hawkeye knockoff Church Collective stuff. The Deep doing his soul searching, I was bored. And these scenes felt very awkward and quite honestly pathetic, but that's in line with the character's mindset, so it somewhat works, but it just bored me. Not Marvel, Maeve's personal relationship with that girl just feels like we're retreading dialogue and talking points of stuff that was already covered in Season 1. It does not work for me. I don't want to feel like we're just repeating ourselves here. Season 1, that stuff was done better, and let's not just repeat it. That stuff felt lackluster this time around because we've been there, done that. I don't want to see Maeve constantly have one foot in the door and one foot out when it comes to this particular relationship. Either go all in or get the hell out. With that said, I gotta say, episode 1 felt really off without the dynamic of the boys. Without Butcher, I almost felt like we're watching a different show because the chemistry, lack of friction, and all the crazy stuff it gets them involved in. Uh, just him absent sucks. It gets better when he returns at the end of episode 1, and I have my own problems with Butcher as a character and Huey as a character too, and the friction between those two. So a few things: Huey lying to Starlight. Again, it feels like we're playing up CW drama, and Huey's been really in that CW drama mindset, that soap opera-esque type stuff, where he's just been watching videos and moping around, and it just sucks. Let's flesh this character out already and push him more in Butcher's direction. Also, walk Butcher back a little bit in Huey's direction. So, lying to Starlight just makes things worse, and there's no sense in doing it. It just feels like drama for the sake of drama, and it doesn't make sense for me, for this character. For the sake of character growth, which he's already shown, and how far these characters have come, it doesn't make sense for him to lie to her here. It just makes things worse, and it's drama for the sake of drama. So the dynamic of the boys themselves, they need to become more interesting, honestly, in my opinion. They are not nearly as interesting as the 7, and that's a problem. When your heroes, when your villains are more interesting, compelling, and layered than your heroes, that's a problem they need to work on moving forward, and I really hope they do. And here's what I think they really need to do. Like I said, Huey hasn't been that great of a character, but hopefully he does more standing his ground, because there is a moment where he punches Butcher in the face. It doesn't really work out that great for him. It doesn't really pay off. But if he stays on track as someone capable and more interesting than moping around, telling lies that don't need to be told, and pulling his own weight, then that really tighten their grip on this stuff. Butcher, while charismatic and entertaining, he's just a complete selfish dick and completely unlikable at sometimes. It's hard to believe that Mother's Milk and Frenchie aren't butting heads with him as much as Huey. So I really think they need to work on getting these characters on track and getting some real growth that sticks. Because frankly, Mother's Milk, who doesn't have much going for him this season, is already more interesting than both of them to me. And for me, Starlight and Homelander are currently leading this show. So if you can just walk Butcher a little bit back into Huey's direction, where he has more compassion and more morals that he abides by, and then push Huey a little bit more in Butcher's direction, where he still has his morals and stuff, but he's willing to go that extra mile to get the job done. Make these guys better than they are. You need your heroes better than they are. With that said, though, comment down below. Let me know your favorite and least favorite moments, all that stuff. What works for you, what didn't work for you. Do you agree with some of the stuff I said? Do you disagree with some of the stuff I said? We can talk about it in the comment section. But for the first 2 episodes of the season, I give an average 5 out of 10. The 3rd episode really upped the ante, upped the stakes, all that. It feels like we're finally getting somewhere, but they need to tighten the narrative, since we're only going to have like 8 episodes, if I remember correctly, and we're almost halfway through the season, and I don't feel like we have a real clear direction. So the 3rd episode, I'd give a 6 out of 10. It was much more interesting, especially in the back half of the episode. So far, this season, though, has been kind of underwhelming, unfortunately. But I'm really excited to see where we're going to go moving forward. But a good one here. Eventually, we will. Stay awesome. Rock on.